father come into the hospital. I thought he was crazy, out of his mind. He's hanging onto a Halloween mask. He wouldn't let it go. And what he said was, they're gonna kill us all.
I'm not going back to LA until I find out what happened to my father.
Mom already got his mask. Silver Shamrock, look.
Do me another favor, will you? Find out everything you can about Connell Cochran. He runs Silver Shamrock.
A great man, Connell Cochran. A true genius.
You don't really know much about Halloween. I do love a good joke, and this is the best ever. A joke on the children. Sacrifices. The world's going to change tonight, Doctor. I'm glad you'll be able to watch it.
Hey there and welcome to Home Drive-In. The original Halloween is a landmark in horror movie cinema, made on a shoestring and was so effective in its simplicity it became a favourite among many horror fans, including yours truly. The ensuing box office phenomenon prompted an unnecessary but mostly enjoyable sequel which, despite being a little derivative, still proved financially successful. Yet by the time talk of a third film came around, it seemed creators John Carpenter and Deborah Hill were done with their franchise's leading antagonist, Michael Myers, and wanted to take the series in a bold new direction. Would this move, however, prove successful? Today we unpack the black sheep of the Halloween franchise with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which I will be discussing in detail, so consider this your spoiler warning moving forward. And if you are new here, welcome aboard. If you do enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing and tap that notification button. But for now, let the show begin. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch sees America's #1 toy manufacturer, Silver Shamrock, market their popular range of Halloween masks with an extensive advertising campaign. When Dr. Chalice admits a barely coherent salesman clutching one of the Halloween masks, the man is later murdered by a mysterious assassin, who then sets himself alight in the hospital parking lot. When the salesman's daughter arrives to identify her father, she teams up with Dr. Chalice to investigate his murder. And each other, it turns out. Their investigation leads them to the elusive Silver Shamrock Company, nestled within the quiet town of Santa Mira. As Halloween approaches, they soon uncover a diabolical plot by the company's founder, Connell Cochran, who intends to return the holiday to its Celtic and bloody origins. After the financial success of the first two Halloween films, writer and producers Deborah Hill and John Carpenter were soon approached about yet another sequel. With Halloween 2 putting a supposed end to Michael Myers' bloody rampage, they agreed on the condition that this new film would drop the character entirely. The plan was to turn the franchise into an anthology series by releasing a new, unrelated film each year that would be centered around the Halloween season. Deborah Hill came up with the idea that this new film should, in her own words, combine witchcraft with the computer age, and suggested London-born writer Nigel Kneale to write the screenplay. Kneale was best known for writing the Quatermass series and was set to write a remake of The Creature from the Black Lagoon to be directed by John Landis. The project fell through when they realised they would be competing with another creature feature follow-up that was scheduled for release the same year. Joe Dante, who'd had recent success with The Howling, agreed to direct this new entry and collaborated with Kneale, who was given about 6 weeks to turn in a script. However, Kneale's story seemed to favour suspense over the bloody standards set by Halloween 2, which did get producers nervous, so John Carpenter had to go at a rewrite. After Joe Dante left the project to work on Twilight Zone the movie instead, Carpenter and Hill invited their old friend and collaborator, Tommy Lee Wallace, to take the director's chair instead. Wallace, who was the production designer on Halloween and The Fog, had been given the chance to direct Halloween 2, yet chose not to participate since he was unhappy with the story. Believing this had soured their relationship, Wallace was shocked when invited to direct Halloween 3 and delighted when he discovered it would be unrelated to the first two films. He wasn't, however, too thrilled with Carpenter's rewrite and tackled a third draft himself, which by this stage was straying quite a bit from Nigel Kneale's original story. Kneale ultimately dropped his name from the film, leaving Wallace with sole writing credit. However, many of Kneale's concepts would make it into the final film. Nigel Neal came up with the central idea, which focused on a toy company that would use their merchandise to unleash an evil spell that would be triggered by a TV broadcast. He also did include the two lead protagonists becoming romantically involved, however this was apparently given far more time to develop, rather than the shoehorned in romance that the film ultimately gives us, but hey, it's still a more convincing love story than this.
I truly, deeply love you.
Neal's story focused more on the mystery aspect and lacked the violence that producers felt that modern audiences demanded, so Carpenter and Wallace's rewrites sought to rectify this. Cochrane's army of androids was added to give the film a more physical threat, so even without Michael Myers, audiences could still expect to see some silent assassins up to no good. And finally, Cochrane hauling a 5-ton piece of Stonehenge to the United States to carry out his plan was another addition, since apparently this story wasn't far-fetched enough already. Also wanting to deviate from the traditional final girl that 80s slasher films were known for, it was decided to make Halloween 3's protagonist an, albeit rather flawed middle-aged male. Tom Atkins stars as Dr. Chalice, a character with some questionable morals, especially regarding his pursuit of booze and young women over his duties as a doctor and father. Atkins was suggested by Deborah Hill, who had co-starred in John Carpenter's films The Fog and Escape from New York, and was delighted to be offered a leading role. Stacey Nelkin, who had mostly appeared in minor roles on TV, arrived at her audition and impressed the producers so much she was offered the part before leaving the building. Nelkin plays Ellie Grimbridge, whose determination to uncover the truth behind her father's murder brings her and Dr. Chalice to the Silver Shamrock Company and its founder. Ireland-born Dan O'Herlihy, who later became recognisable as the old man in Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop, was cast as diabolical toymaker Conal Cochrane. Being a seasoned actor and Irish, he not only brought a wealth of professionalism to the film, but also a vast knowledge of Halloween's Celtic traditions. Much like Donald Pleasence did for the original Halloween, his presence certainly elevated the production and was, by all accounts, a terrific actor to work with, despite by many reports not being a fan of the finished movie.
I'm very disappointed.
Halloween 3 was shot on a production budget of $2.5 million and began filming in the spring of 1982. Much like the Point Reyes location in The Fog, which Tommy Lee Wallace insists was an incredibly lucky find, they also fell on similar such fortune for Halloween 3. The movie was filmed in several locations, including Sierra Madre, California, and the small town of Lolita, which doubled for the fictional town of Santa Mira. Lolita not only had the necessary infrastructure, including the hotel and factory, but also had a creepy vibe that suited the company town it would be standing in for. Which is apparently still true to this day, since some who have returned there claim to have gotten the feeling of being watched, with locals keeping a close eye on those who enter their little village. And if the name Santa Mira sounds familiar, you'd be correct, since it's directly taken from the original 1956 film adaptation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In fact, Tommy Lee Wallace was so influenced by Body Snatchers that an early scene in a phone booth was filmed in the exact location where the pot exchange scene occurred in Don Siegel's classic. Since Tommy Lee Wallace was once again teaming up with much of the crew he had worked on with Halloween and The Fog, he felt right at home in what would be his directorial debut. His working relationship with John Carpenter seemed especially ideal, since Carpenter's hands-off approach allowed Wallace to take creative control while still feeling fully supported. And the fact that Carpenter was busy with post-production on The Thing probably had a little something to do with it. Also rejoining the team was cinematographer Dean Cundy, who, having worked on the first two Halloween films, The Fog and Escape from New York, was the only choice for Halloween 3. Cundy was also pleased that this new film would be unrelated and looked forward to the challenges this new breed of horror film would present. While Halloween 3 was a fresh story with new characters, there were some returning faces and, as it would happen, voices from the previous films. Nancy Loomis, best known for playing Annie in the original Halloween, appears this time as Dr. Chalice's ex-wife Linda. However, Loomis is more heard than seen, making her presence especially felt through no fewer than 3 irate phone calls with her on-screen ex-husband. Jamie Lee Curtis also lends her vocal talents as the phone operator toward the end of the film and as the announcer calling for curfew heard over the Santa Mira sound system. While not a veteran of the Halloween franchise himself, making a brief appearance as Chalice's son is actor Joshua John Miller. Miller would later appear in Near Dark and would himself become a screenwriter, notably co-writing the film The Final Girls, which is a loving homage to 80s slasher films. However, he did already have a background in the horror genre before Halloween 3, since he happens to be the son of Jason Miller, who appeared as Father Karras in The Exorcist.
Proud community, predominantly Irish.
Irish Halloween masks?
Wallace was so immersed in the Irish nature of this new film to the point he was ambitious enough to consider casting all of the android characters with red-haired actors. He soon realised the impracticality of finding such a cast and instead chose background extras since they didn't have to speak, much like the franchise's original villain. And if you think Michael Myers doesn't appear in this film, well, you're technically wrong. And no, I'm not just talking about his brief cameo scene in a TV advertisement. Yes, the original Halloween movie exists within a Halloween sequel. Go figure. Dick Warlock, who stepped into the role of Michael Myers for Halloween 2, plays one of the featured androids in the film, as well as once again taking on the role of stunt coordinator. His work in the film certainly provided some unforgettable moments, both on and off screen, first and foremost since he plays the android that unscrews the head of a local homeless man. He also performs as the stunt driver when the android version of Ellie attacks Dan in the car, which, if you watch closely, grazes a telephone pole as it speeds by. This was in fact unintentional, as he simply meant to drive past it but clipped it while turning off the road, which gave Stacey Nelkin, and likely himself, quite the scare. Tommy Lee Wallace imagined that the title Halloween 3 not only signified the third chapter of the series, but also represents the 3 styles of Halloween masks central to the story. The props were created with the assistance of Don Post Studios, which had been manufacturing quality latex masks since its foundation in 1938. However, only the jack-o'-lantern mask required designing from scratch, since the skull had been in production since 1967, and the witch, known as Hagatha, had recently been developed. Trick or Treat Studios, which purchased Don Post Studios in 2022, has since acquired the license to produce the 3 masks, complete with silver SHAMROCK logos. They have since become one of the go-to companies for official film merchandise, and their products are sure to entice horror fans. I have left a link in the description if you want to check them out, just don't blame me if you spend all your money. In his Halloween sequel trilogy, David Gordon Green would feature the 3 masks, which can be seen at various points throughout the series. So Halloween 3 exists within the sequel trilogy. How meta can this series get? But of course, the jack-o'-lantern mask in particular would play centre stage in what would become Halloween 3's most memorable moment.
All right, roll it.
Effects creator Tom Berman, who worked on Close Encounters of the Third Kind and the 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, also created the gruesome effects for Halloween 3. However, his talent was on full display during the infamous test sequence when Conal Cochran demonstrates his wicked plan for the children of Halloween night. He forces Dr. Chalice to witness the effects of his scheduled big giveaway broadcast on unsuspecting salesman Buddy Kupfer and his family. When Little Buddy, played with insufferable brattiness by Brad Schacter, falls victim to the booby-trapped Halloween mask, his head seems to implode before becoming host to an assortment of bugs and snakes. Berman took a mould of the young actor's head from which a latex dummy was created, where the horde of wildlife would emerge, causing some anxiety for one particular cast member. Actress Jadeen Garber was initially nervous about filming her death scene where, after collapsing at the sight of her deceased son, she can be seen with a small python slithering on her head. After seeing her initial discomfort, a stunt double was brought in to perform the shot instead, by which Garber had been allowed to become acquainted with one of the baby snakes. She'd since become so fond of it and decided she wanted to film the shot herself, placing the baby snake gently to her mouth to prove she was up for the challenge. However, it wasn't the snakes that caused the most trouble, since many of the crickets had escaped and found hiding places all over the studio, with the entire crew falling victim to their incessant chirping. And while deadly Halloween masks were no substitute for Michael Myers in the eyes of some, parts of Halloween 3 were certainly memorable, and one particular aspect was what I call unget out of your headable.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Oh my God.
Deborah Hill recruited composer Alan Howarth and Tommy Lee Wallace with creating the infuriatingly catchy melody that is the Silver Shamrock commercial theme song. With no budget to hire someone to create a jingle from scratch, they decided to set it to the tune of London Bridge is Falling Down, since it was already in the public domain. Supported by some simple notes created on a synthesizer, the simplicity of the resulting tune made it all the more memorable. A man of many talents, having lent his voice for the KAB radio station in the fog, Wallace discovered that he had quite the talent for voiceovers and was recruited as the announcer for the advert.
Gather round your TV set, put on your masks, and watch the big giveaway at 9.
He also provided the theme song itself, with Howarth recording Wallace's voice at low speed, which, when sped up, gives him the appropriate chipmunk-sounding vocals required. Effects artist Sam Nicholson spent a week creating the visual elements of the commercial, which, considering his long career in the industry, he said was certainly a one-of-a-kind project. And there's absolutely zero chance that his animated logo for Silver Shamrock was partly the inspiration for the logo of my channel. Zero chance.
You don't really know much about Halloween. You thought no further than the strange custom of having your children wear masks and go out begging for candy.
As wacky as Halloween 3 is, one could argue that it must at least be representing some deeper context, and I believe the film's anti-corporate message is relatively clear. There is an irony in Cochran's plan, since he uses the over-commercialization of Halloween against the consumer, in this case children, using the very medium that allows it to thrive: television. He laments how Halloween has been reduced to kids begging for candy, neglecting his, albeit largely fabricated, deeper meaning of the season. Tommy Lee Wallace believed that men in suits often represented the bad guys, and Cochran's army of suited androids says a lot about the ingrained soullessness of major corporations. This resonates even more in this modern age, especially in one particular moment when Chalice meets a local homeless man. The man bitterly explains how the Silver Shamrock Company refused him employment since Cochran had brought in his own people, when later discovering that his workers include robots may strike a nerve with anyone whose once gainful employment was replaced by machinery. Which brings us to one point raised about the film in which Ellie reveals herself as one of Cochran's androids, begging the question, was she a robot the entire time? Wallace did confirm the popular opinion that she was indeed human for most of the film and was only replaced by an android after Cochran's goons kidnapped her. And besides, if she had been a robot the whole time, you think Dr. Chalice may have cottoned on during their extracurricular shenanigans.
Machine gun jubblies? How did I miss those, baby?
However, just for fun, let's explore a really crazy conspiracy theory in circulation.
What's your name?
Pris.
Mine's J.F. Sebastian.
It's been said that Stacey Nelkin was destined to play an android in one form or another, since she actually auditioned for the role of Pris in Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, a part ultimately won by Daryl Hannah. Nelkin, however, was cast as Mary, one of the other 6 replicants mentioned at the start of the film. However, due to a writer's strike, her role was scrapped before filming started. So is it possible that in some Halloween Blade Runner universe crossover, that the Tyrell Corporation used what was learned at Silver Shamrock to create replicants with Ellie as a prototype? Okay, it's a ridiculous theory, but it's still fun to think about.
Look! You fools! You're in danger! Can't you see? They're after you!
Tommy Lee Wallace made no secret of the influence that the 1956 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers had on Halloween 3, which is particularly evident during its somewhat polarizing ending. Director Don Siegel originally wanted to end Body Snatchers with Kevin McCarthy's now iconic "You're Next" moment as he hysterically warns motorists about the incoming invasion. However, the film's producers got nervous about this downbeat conclusion and tacked on the now canonical wraparound story, suggesting that the world would indeed be saved. Yet despite also receiving some initial pushback, Wallace won the right to tribute Don Siegel's original vision for Body Snatchers by leaving his conclusion to Halloween 3 open-ended.
It's still on, please. Take off the third channel. The third channel. It's still running. Stop it, please. For God's sake, please stop it. There's no more time.
And the similarities are certainly evident, as Chalice screams for the networks to take the Silver Shamrock commercial off the air, mirroring Kevin McCarthy's original closing moments with great affection. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a Halloween 3 defender through and through. I love this movie, but one can't deny its gaping plot holes, which for fun, I'm now going to pull apart like an android does a salesman's skull. So as the kids on Halloween 3 counted down to the big giveaway at 9, let's count down the 5 biggest plot holes of Halloween 3.
Stonehenge. We had a time getting it here. You wouldn't believe how we did it.
We're all ears. The film conveniently circumvents explaining the logistics of stealing a rock from Stonehenge and bringing it back to the United States, the mechanics of which are simply mind-boggling. Oh well, I guess no explanation is still more satisfying than this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
It has a power in it.
As the film explains, fragments of Stonehenge are placed into a microchip on each mask, set to unleash their evil magic during Silver Shamrock's special Halloween broadcast. Why then are technicians still chipping away at the stone slab on Halloween? The big giveaway broadcast is at 9 PM that evening. Surely there's no time for more masks to be distributed.
Watch the magic pumpkin. Watch.
Networks would no doubt preview something before putting it to air. Did no one question why Silver Shamrock's alleged big giveaway was simply a flashing pumpkin and repetitive music? This moment. That is some bullshit. And now for Halloween 3's biggest plot hole.
Where do you want to sleep, Dr. Chalice?
Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a prude. Ellie seems to be a woman who knows what she wants, and Tom Atkins is a good-looking guy, but wouldn't this be the last thing on her mind considering she's still grieving the loss of her father? I'm not even going to call out the age difference. I'm sure there's many younger women who'd love to get on the Atkins diet, but there's literally nothing that leads up to this. But it's not like it's the first time a Tom Atkins character beds a woman half his age in such a short space of time. In The Fog, he's already done the no-pants dance with Jamie Lee Curtis within an hour of meeting her. Dude, what is your secret? But while we're on the topic, here's an interesting side note. Garn Stevens, Tom Atkins' actual wife at the time, plays Marge Gutman, the unfortunate shop owner whose tinkering with the Silver Shamrock trademark gives us one of the film's more gruesome death scenes. And the fact that in that precise moment, Tom Atkins is getting busy with Stacey Nelkin in the very next hotel room must have made for an interesting dynamic on set. Having also collaborated on Halloween 2 and Escape from New York, John Carpenter and Alan Howarth once again returned to create the score for Halloween 3. The pair had assembled a basic template for an effective horror movie score and wanted the music for this film to somewhat match what came before, but also add something fresh. For instance, Chariots of Pumpkins, the track used in the opening chase scene, seems to echo the main theme from the first 2 Halloween films, with a faster pace and futuristic quality. Once again using synthesizers, Carpenter and Howarth combined elements of sci-fi and horror, which would later even be compared to Brad Fiddel's music for The Terminator. The resulting score, while certainly familiar stuff from Carpenter, is no less effective and launched a soundtrack album that, like the film itself, only increased in popularity over the years. The soundtrack has enjoyed several releases from MCA Records and Varese Sarabande, each containing 12 tracks. The complete score was later released by Alan Howarth's own label in 2007, containing the original 12-track album plus an additional 13 known as the bonus tracks. Death Waltz Recording Company has reissued a revised version of the album on LP with 21 tracks, with the most recent print sporting the Silver Shamrock logo on the vinyl label, which in my book alone makes it worth the purchase. And yes, whichever version you get your hands on, it does, in one form or another, contain the earworm that is the Silver Shamrock jingle.
I don't believe this commercial never stops.
You don't really know much about Halloween.
Witchcraft.
Halloween 3 Season of the Witch was released in October 1982, earning about $14.5 million, but only lasting about 2 weeks in theatres due to its panning by critics and audiences. Tommy Lee Wallace later admitted that not much was done to prepare audiences that this new film wouldn't feature the masked killer they'd come to know and love. It soon became clear that fans were expecting Michael Myers to return and were furious at his absence from the film, while critics weren't too forgiving either. Roger Ebert blasted Halloween 3 for being derivative, yet managed a kind word for Stacey Nelkin, calling her the one saving grace of the film. Other critics were quick to pinpoint the film's major plot holes and jumbled approach to storytelling, yet not everyone was out to dismiss the movie. Vincent Canby gave a more balanced review, while declaring the film to be anti-capitalist, anti-Irish and anti-children, still praised Tommy Lee Wallace's direction, admitting the film's cliches were nonetheless executed with style. However, the absence of Michael Myers seemed to be the final nail in the coffin for the series, with Halloween 3 becoming the pariah of a once-beloved franchise. Erwin Yablans, the founder of the original film's distributor Compass International, was also not shy about his contempt for Halloween 3. He maintains he had no creative input, but as executive producer was happy to receive the money it made him, but insists that dropping the franchise's primary antagonist was a foolish decision. However, Tommy Lee Wallace, Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin have declared themselves proud of Halloween 3, and found that it is one of the films they are most frequently asked about. Nonetheless, when the rights to the franchise reverted back to Compass International, they continued the series in 1988 with Halloween 4, making it abundantly clear that its main character was indeed returning. At the time the film was released, a book by Dennis Etchison, who also wrote the novelizations for Halloween 2 and The Fog, again took a few liberties with the source material. Under the pseudonym Jack Martin, he amps up the fright factor in a few key moments and includes a more definitive ending, which I will not spoil for you here. The novelization actually proved to be more successful than the movie itself, being popular enough to earn a republication in 1984. You should find it on eBay, albeit for a price, but if you can get your hands on it, it's a fun little read. Halloween 3's release on home media has had somewhat of a shaky history due to receiving some oddly censored versions over the years. Good Times first released the film on DVD in 1998, yet inexplicably has a few sound effects missing in certain scenes. In Australia, Thorn EMI's original VHS release was the uncut version, yet by the time it got its first release on DVD by Infogrames, according to IMDb, several edits had been made. This version allegedly has much of the violence seen in the deaths of Ellie's father, Marge, and the homeless man censored, with cuts inexplicably made to other, more innocuous moments. Halloween 3 got the Shout Factory treatment uncut on Blu-ray and 4K with a terrific selection of extras, including commentaries with Tommy Lee Wallace and Tom Atkins. It also contains a half-hour documentary and some informative interviews, plus a location tour with Sean Clark and Tommy Lee Wallace. This particular featurette also includes an amusing appearance by Robert Rustler, who seems to be no fan of Halloween 3, despite himself appearing in the black sheep of another long-running horror franchise.
You know what? Elm Street 2 sucks. Think of that. You're a fucking ass.
In 2024, Australian label Via Vision also released the film on Blu-ray with many of the same extras ported from Shout Factory's version. It includes an additional commentary featuring film historian Lee Gambon and would-be Halloween 3 director Joe Dante. Is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch an objectively bad film? Well, many seem to think so, but if it is, it's an enjoyably bad film that I happen to love, despite arguably not taking its admittedly creative premise far enough. It is a shame the anthology experiment failed, but the lack of the franchise's original villain sealed Halloween 3's fate, with Michael Myers loyalists all but lynching the film. It's often said that if it hadn't been marketed as a Halloween sequel, it may have enjoyed greater success, a theory I tend to agree with. But thankfully Halloween 3 got the appreciation it deserved on its own merits, and has now emerged with a fiercely loyal cult following. There is a lot to enjoy in this outlandish Halloween entry, with its wacky premise, Dean Cundy's always impactful cinematography, eerie atmosphere, and impressive score. So if you're in the mood for a different Halloween Fright Fest, kids, gather around your TV sets, put on your favourite Halloween masks, and watch that magic pumpkin. Watch.
Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Thanks so much for watching this video. If you are among those who initially boycotted Halloween 3, maybe try viewing it as a standalone film and consider giving it another chance. I've left my rankings for all 13 Halloween films in the description, and I'd love to see where Halloween 3 sits in your list, so feel free to let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, if you want to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button, that'd be awesome. I will be back soon with a new video, but until then, take care. Don't forget the big giveaway at 9. I'll see you next time. Complete with Silver Shamrock. Silver Shamrock, for fuck's sake. Released by Alan Howarth's own label in 2007, and my teleprompter is going too fast for me. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Gotta stop singing that.